Must be an old college in New Cross. If you look around and see how those high benches that like science things, no building science, history or biology or something, those high benches. And that is where we filmed it off in one of those rooms. It was a nice job because it's one of those series that everyone loved at the time. So 6 years on, you think smashing up and burning up with that. Thank you very much. Your phone.
It's the fire alarm.
If only there was a fire station.
It is.
Exactly. So I don't have a great deal of memories except that it was easy, it was fun. James only did a few takes for each scene, which made it nice and easy. He was lovely to work with. So was what was the girl's name?
Chloe?
No, what was her real name? Dorothy. Dorothy was lovely. And the mother, she was lovely. I can't remember her name. That's a long time ago. But she was very protective of Colin, I seem to remember. And we had that scene throwing the chocolate sauce all over us. So remember, we're all dressed in white. We only had one chance to do it. There were no retapes. You only had one set of costumes. So she had to get the throwing correct. And I think it looked all right. It kind of got over us. But we then had to stay there for 20 minutes while they reset and came in for a close-up. Dripping chocolate, gooey, horrible stuff all over us. But it was lovely. It really was. I would like to say at this point that I do have another connection to the programme. Back at the time, I was part of an actors' agency, which is where actors form an agency and are agents for each other. That's where I got the London's Burning job. And one of my mates in the agency went up for a job, a part, and that was Sammy Beckinsale. Lovely Samantha. And it wasn't her first job, it was her second job. And I remember I was in the office when they rang up and said, "Oh, Samantha's got the part, would you like to tell her?" So I do remember ringing her up at home. She'd just come back from shopping with her mum and I was hearing a scream in the background that she'd got the job. So I've always been very proud, love the series and always watch it then because of Sammy. Who sort of withdrawn from the spotlight these days. So that was my experience on London's Burning. If anyone's got any specific questions about that, then please ask. Now's your time, put your hand up. If not, I shall hand the microphone on to someone else. Any questions? Oh, yes, please.
What was your most memorable part of being in London's Burning?
Probably standing there covered in chocolate. It's not something that happens every day. And it wasn't really chocolate, it was some kind of horrible gooey mess. You know, they went up like to look like chocolate. So you couldn't cook it, it wasn't lovely. You couldn't do that, it was life. But it looked good. Yeah, it's great. No, not at all. No. I mean, that would have been nice. A nice bowl of melted lint chocolate. Smash it. But no, it was kind of glistening, you know, flavourings and brown colour. So not very nice at all. But an awful lot of fun and something I'm really proud to have on my CV. Yes, but there we are. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
It was a day that I'm just a jobbing actor. I was actually looking at my CV to remind myself of when I did this. It was in 1988. That's 38 years ago. I can't remember what I did last week. So, it was a day's falling for me, and the way I got it, Les Blair was directing the episode, And I had worked for Les in 1974. Alan Bleasdale. You all know who Alan Bleasdale is? Wrote Voice of the Black Stone, many other very good things. The first play he ever wrote was called Early to Bed. And it was about a young 18-year-old boy in northern working class Lancashire having an affair with the next door neighbour, who's Alison Stedman. Les remembered me from 1974, for God's sake. So 14 years later, he gave me another job, which was very nice of him. I didn't have to audition for it, just it came through. Those are the days when jobs just came through for actors. It's very different nowadays. You have to, we're just talking about this amongst ourselves recently, that you have to make self-tapes now. We all sit there with our partners or friends and they get their phone out and you do an ident, David Warwick, you show your hands, you show your profile, you tell people what you've done in the last 5 years, which is normally nothing, and then you read a bit of the script that they want, and then you send it off by Dropbox or some other app, and then you forget about it. You don't meet anybody in it nowadays, unless it's theatre. I know Paddy's going up where she'll meet somebody. But in 88, you always went up to meet somebody. So to have it given to me by Les Blair was a rather nice thing to do. Because he knew me. I filmed it somewhere. I think Anthony was asking this question recently. I think it was in Blackheath, the house. It was just an afternoon's filming. They took over a house. I learnt my lines. You go in, you run through it, you do the scene. Then you really like, you go outside, have a coffee, you go back in into the newly lit scene, you do the rest of the scene, you say your lines, and then you go home. And you don't really meet anybody. I didn't meet anybody apart from those people in that room that afternoon. I've never met Gerard Oren. I knew James Marcus, who played the station chief, because we shared an agent. I met an associate agent artist, but I never saw him. I never met him in the episode. And it's like that. I did an episode once of Only Fools and Horses, and I never met David Jason and Nicholas Lyndhurst, because my little bit was on a telly screen. Remember an episode where somebody stole blow-up dolls?
Yeah.
That was a Christmas special.
Yeah.
And I was merely the BBC newsreader on a television set in a Chinese takeaway mentioning this robbery. I never met anybody. When I did my second one of Doctor Who, I never met David Tennant. I was sent to an industrial unit in the back streets of Cardiff or Newport. The crew rushed in. I'd learnt my lines. I was playing the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. I did my scene, 2 scenes, 2 takes, gone, and never met anybody. It's the way our business often works. Unless you're like the lucky guys who are regulars in London's Burning, you don't get to meet anybody. You don't get to form an attachment with the production or the crew or anything like that, because you're just doing one day. But one day, though, I do remember, I think Sandra Vose in my episode, I know her from previously. It was a very easy day. It was a very pleasant day. Most people who work on these dramas are good at their job. Oh, they are. Of course, they're good. They have to be good at the job. If you're not good, then you don't get employed again. That's the nature of freelance work. So you've got to always turn up on time, always know your lines, do what's expected of you. Don't upset the apple cart and go away hoping you've left a good impression. So that's as much as I can say about that. 1988, somebody will remind me maybe what episode it was. It's a Christmas special, I believe. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm doing those. Anything I haven't covered? Anybody want to ask me anything about inside leg measurements, O-levels, anything
Are you free from actor?
I'm free for everything between now and the funeral. You don't have to do it. You have to need to do it. I work a lot. I used to work a lot in drama schools, and people would come up to me and say, "My daughter would like to be an actress. What's your advice?" And I would say, "Tell her to go and lie down in a dark room till the feeling goes away."
Yeah.
Because you have to need to do it. Wanting to do it, thinking it might be a good idea is not enough. You have to have a burning desire, which means nothing else will feed you. Nothing else will suffice in your life. And I used to have that for 50 years. Not anymore. That's my little bit, really. And thank you for asking me here.
Who you are and the character and your scene with a certain firefighting.
Yeah. Well, lovely to meet you all. Thank you very much for inviting me, Andrew. Well, I was in the original film, which was written by Jack Rosenthal and directed also by Les Blair. And I really only had one scene, which I haven't seen for a long time. I'd quite like to see it. I was playing, I don't know if any of you remember it, but I was playing a bit of a femme fatale, sort of bored, rich. I think the house was also in Blackheath, actually. And her summer house burns down, and Mark Arden is the father's actor. And we have a bit of a rapport, should I say, in the scene. A bit of flirtation goes on. I can't remember the name of my character. Maybe somebody does. I don't. I don't know what year it was either, but it was the very first one. So it was probably what year would it have been? 87. 80s, yeah.
86.
So I haven't got massive stories, I'm afraid, about London's burning, but I've got lots of other stories about my career, if you'd like to tell those. But I mean, like David was saying, it was a very, very different era then, and I was terribly lucky. I started when I was 16, 17, and literally went from job to job. And I think you get into a groove in those days, the TV companies, Thames, London Weekend, Granada, BBC, get into the family with this and the casting directors. And then I was just so lucky. I went from job to job and worked with amazing actors on these fantastic series. And, it's very, very different now with self-tapes and you don't meet anyone. It's all very strange. And as I said, I went from job to job, lovely TV shows, which are now all on UK drama and things. And then sort of 20 years later, I then met my husband, Ken Russell, on a film for South Bank show. Secret Life of Sir Backs, and then that was another phase of my life. And then that was quite a roller coaster. Being married to him. And then the phase after that, I was raising my son, still acting, and now I'm writing as well and producing and trying to get things made and still acting. So it's it's been a long time and I keep going. Any questions?
And you're going to do a one-woman show.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, with which Misty Moon is I think going to produce an evening with Hetty Bates in the autumn. So I think it's been mooted and I it should be fun. So I think it's quite good now to tell the stories, because I think that as actors and writers, directors, we are storytellers primarily, and it's good to keep doing it in whatever form. So I look forward to doing that. So yeah, any questions from anyone? Val?
What jobs did you go on to do after you did London's Bag?
Well, in those days, I was just doing a lot of TV, I can't remember the sequence, but I did guest leads in, as I said, those series, Mind to the Bill, London's Burning, Jonathan Creek, Touch of Frost, a lot of comedy series, because I was a bit of a sitcom queen in those days, guesting in sitcoms, and also in The Last Song, which was a Carla Lane series. We did 2 of those. I was Geoffrey Palmer's daughter. I did quite a lot of period series like Dombey and Son, Sense and Sensibility, those BBC afternoon serials. I did those. Play of the Month. You know, those those ones, you know, film on full 4, screen 2, you know, lots of telly. And theatre dropped in, you know, incredibly lucky.
Where did you train, Hetty?
Well, I trained originally as a dancer, Royal Ballet. Well, I started on the stage at 3, and then had a bit of a career childhood with ballet, and then Royal Ballet School at 10. But then by sort of 13, 14, we were rendering plays, and I was really wanting to act rather than dance. So I went to Elmhurst Ballet School, which was also a theatre school, got an agent, started doing some, you know, more serious drama there, and then decided I want to be an actress, I'll just do it. And I then got a job in Worthing Rep. I was just 17. I thought I'd go on to do drama school, but in fact I kept working. So I got myself a voice coach from the National and another drama coach. And so I did it that way because the jobs just kept coming. And it was very hard to go, oh no, I'm going to go off and do 3 years at Landros. I'm sorry, but those jobs are too good. You know, so I did it like that. And, you know, worked with fantastic people like John Gielgud and Alan Bates, Alan Bedell, you know, all these fantastic actors. So, and then in West End shows, See How They Run, which David and I were talking about, Ray Cooney, Days of Ray Cooney at Shaftesbury Theatre, other West End theatres. So, yeah, rambly answer to where I trained. I trained like that. Yeah. Anyone else? Are we done?
Your time, or it could be the particular scenes in the episodes that you was in, please.
Okay, so we were a storyline in the second series of London's Burning. So it was at another watch, and I played a young black firefighter, and there was, you know, a couple of incidents of bullying, and one slightly dangerous incident, you know, where we went on a call and my breathing apparatus was hidden. So I played Fireman Maddox, and Richard played Scouser. So, Andrew, what do you want me to talk about? The storyline, how it was?
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, I'll start about how I got the job, and then Richard can say how we got the job, and then we can talk about the characterization. Okay, so even though the series came out in 1989, I think we filmed it towards the end of 1988. Richard, can you remember?
No, well, that's what you told me, I think. I'll go with it. It's hard for me to believe because I was 9 years old.
So I think, and I'll tell you why I say that, because I had another series which I did called South of the Border at the BBC, and it was running at the time, and I remember I met Trevor Etienne, and Trevor said to me, oh, I'm really enjoying your work in that series. So that's how I could remember when it was. I don't think it was 1989, because we were in the first 3 episodes, and then there was the court scene. So I think it was towards the end of 1988.
I think you're right.
Okay, so now I was actually at university, and I got a call. I got a call from my agent, and she said to me, go down to London's Weekend Television
at the South Bank, you've got a casting for London's Burning. So she didn't really say much. And I was always so grateful to get a cast, and I didn't really want to upset her by asking too many questions. So I went down to the South Bank, and they gave me a scene to read, which I didn't think it went that well at all, to be quite honest. I thought it was an awful read, to be quite honest. And so I did the scene and then left. And I thought, oh, okay. I don't think I've got that one. But anyway, it's a great show and whatever. And then I think about 2 weeks later, my agent called me and said, right, you've got the part. And I was really surprised. And then she said, oh, and you're going to do 4 episodes. And I was even more surprised because I thought it was just for one episode. And then I remember that we were filming at Old Kent Road.
Yeah.
We were filming at Old Kent Road. I didn't do any training. And we were doing the episodes. They were kind of in some sort of order, weren't they? Because I remember doing the court room scenes last.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
No, definitely.
right. So basically, what happened was I joined this watch, and I can't remember. Someone can tell me what's the name of the main character that was in charge of the watch, that was played by Sean. Who was
John Hallam.
Hallam?
Yeah.
Hallam. Yeah. So Firefighter Hallam had gone to this other watch, so he was in charge of. He was our boss, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the one who sorted it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I just joined the fire brigade, and they gave me this rather unfortunate nickname of Monkey Nuts. Okay, so that's how it started. You know, they were leaving monkey nuts on my staff. They were saying things and whatever. And then I remember there was a call out where I was going to attend, and I think somebody noticed that I didn't have
Yeah, the
I
right.
didn't have a breathing apparatus. So anyway, it all culminated, I think, in episode 3. A few things were happening. So Fireman Hallam was trying to get me to speak up, and I didn't really want to speak up because I didn't really want to snitch or whatever. And it all culminated in this initiation ceremony where they tied me on a ladder, and then they dropped the ladder so that I was under water, and then a call came out, right? So they all ran off, and then I was discovered, and I'd nearly died by Hallam. Okay.
Yeah.
And then eventually they were called to a disciplinary meeting, and then they all got slung out.
You got it. You just missed out that I kicked the ladder. We left you hanging over the water. And then all the other lads ran off. And I just kicked the ladder. And you fell in the water. And you are in that. And then they did that amazing scene. And they had a glass bottom. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, they had a glass bottom tank, and it's an amazing scene of Val in the water and then filming it, and he was brilliant in it. And each of the scenes we did, I mean, there was some, I remember one scene where I, grabbed hold of you and incredibly vicious, racist language. And Val was extraordinary. I mean, he was the perfect casting for it. He's such an honourable young man, and to get this kind of abuse was appalling. I have no recollection of how I got it. It was a kind of lucky period for me. I did quite a lot of telly and quite a few theatre roles after I left drama school. in 1980. I went to drama school very late because I travelled around the world and sailed across the Pacific and done all kinds of other things. And then at 30, I went to drama school, Webber Douglas, and came out in 1980. And it was brilliant. I mean, it just seemed like things fell into place, and this London's Burning sticks out for me because it was special. I mean, it was a lovely group of people. They were fantastic, weren't they?
They were.
And it was the first time you'd seen the brigade, like these men who, you know, we owe so much to, put their lives at risk, and they work hard. But the other element that really I liked very much and was the fact that Fire Brigade themselves had admitted that there was appalling racism dotted about, and they were trying to prove that it wasn't institutional racism. And that's why they wanted this particular storyline, so that they would show one aberrant firefighter who was grossly racist. And it was really to show, you know, the fire brigade will not tolerate this in the real world. So I always thought that was, you know, something that was really, I felt proud to be involved in that. Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't seem to have escaped racism, and the other one is misogyny. It's just interesting how many times do we have to shout about it and say this is outrageous.
It's very ahead of its time. That
Oh, it's very ahead of its time. Yes, it was. Yeah, no, it was. And you know, geez, how much effect it had, I don't know. I don't know what the fire brigade is like, but we had, you know, Louise Casey's report on that Sarah Everard brutal murder by the police officer. And it was, you know, it was stated just a few years ago, her report came out, that the Metropolitan Police Force is institutionally racism. And how anybody can now say we have a two-tier police system is beyond me. You know, I never heard these people shouting about two-tier police service, two-tier police system, when, you know, we've had generation after generation of appalling racist and, you know, sometimes get off your soapbox, Richard. Shut up. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. And for the last, I don't know, since my daughter, the mortgage, and my wife came along, I discovered that I could do a much better job of earning a living as a tour guide in London. And I loved it, and I did it for about 15 years. Lockdown came, and I've gone back to doing it. I do 2 nights a week, and it's really about misogyny, because it's Jack the Ripper. Some of the people who come on my tour, they're looking at me amazed, because I'm not talking about Jack the Ripper. I'm talking about these women who were brutally murdered, and then equally brutally treated in the way it was decided, you know, they were responsible for their death. They brought it about on themselves, and there's no evidence to support it. So, you know, anyway, I'll shut up now. Any questions for either of us?
Did you find that people treated you differently in the street? Did you have any
My wife was appalled when she saw it. And she really did worry that I would be, you know, attacked. When I first started doing the tours, which was 2007, so it was nearly 10 years after we did it, I did, for the first few years, it seemed it was still in the memory bank. And occasionally people would come up and say, "You look like that fella who played Scouser on London's Burning. What have you got to say about it?" And I say, "Not a lot, really. Doing my best, you know. I've got lots of things wrong in my life and a few things right." I remember there was a a young girl at school with me, and she said, "You've got to see this group. They're great." I said, "Okay." So we went to this club in Liverpool, and this band came out, and acoustics are terrible, but they were great. I was 14, I knew everything. And she said, "They're going to be great." And I said, "They don't stand a chance." She said, "Why'd you say that?" I said, "Well, it's obvious, isn't it? You look at the top 20 records. I don't know how many of you are here old enough to remember the late 50s, the 60s, but it was Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly. You know, our fellas didn't quite make it." I said, "So they're not American." And number two, the Beatles. What kind of a name is that? No, come on. It should, no, you can laugh, but it should be John Lennon and the Beatles, or Paul McCartney and the Beatles, because just like it's Buddy Holly and the Critic. That's obvious, wasn't it? And number two, from Liverpool, nobody had taken them seriously or understand them. So, 18 months later, they had the number 1 and 2 EPs, the number 1 and 2 LPs, and the number 1 and 2 singles in the charts. And I thought, oops, I might have got that one wrong there.
And the special effects and picking shots. It's still a creative process, you know, and listening to the music and thinking, you know, all right, this music goes nicely here. What do we think about this person? You know,
Very creative.
yeah, it's still, there's loads of ways to create. I think because I started, my first job was the stage version of Bugs and Malone with Catherine Zeta-Jones at Her Majesty's Theatre. Because I started young, I realised that I really didn't want to always wait to be invited to the party. And I think the thing about being an actor is that you're always waiting to be invited to the party. Whereas as a producer, you can make things happen. You know, you can pick up a
Put you on
script.
the party.
Huh? Yeah, I can put on the yes, and I like that journey because because I will only take something that I know I can get done. You know, I can only like Stephen's executive producer. He's also a consultant surgeon, and I met Stephen in Cannes last year. You know, we were sitting down, and he said to me, "You know, I've got a script that I'd like to make." And within 6 months, we shot his film in Cyprus. A producer can do that, and an actor can't do that. So I really do enjoy being on the other side and producing. And I only produce independent films. Telly's really difficult to get into. It's really hard. I mean, with telly, you need track record. You know, no commissioner is going to commission a new writer. You know, they want track record. And the beautiful thing about shows like London's Burning was that it was shows that allowed people to build up the track record. You know, it was a show that you could act in and then direct. It was a show that allowed new talent in to the whole process. Because right now, honestly, people say to me, "I'll take it to Netflix." No, I mean, if you're going to be on Netflix, the writers needs to have done a successful show before. The directors need to have directed a successful show. And the producers, they're not going to lose their jobs. Not in telly, not even at the Beep. So it's a lot harder now to get in. And I remember in November when I came to this and I spoke to the producer, he said to me, "Val, you know, when we did London's Burning, we used to cast from one book, Spotlight." Okay? And he said to me, there was maybe 20, 25 agents that we dealt with. And in Spotlight at that time, in that book was thick. He said, right now, there's thousands and thousands of online agencies and thousands of actors. Yeah. So when people are sending in their self-tapes, you know, in our day, I think my strike rate was maybe 1 in 5. I mean, today would most probably 1 in 20 or 1 in 25 or 1 in 30 because everybody's doing self-tapes. which actually, to be honest, as a producer, we don't see lots and lots of self-tapes. So the casting directors, but then there is a bias because the casting directors then tend to pick the same people all the time. So if I'm producing a film, okay, so we have the lead talents that we need to raise the money. We have the lead talents that need to sell the film, 2 or 3, okay? And then everybody else will go to a general, we'll get a casting director, and we'll go to a general casting. We don't see lots and lots and lots of self-tapes. We leave it to the casting director to shortlist, and for each part, give us maybe 5 or 6. I still like to call people in. I still like book the actor centre, do, you know, because
An audition.
yes,
Yeah,
because you know what happens?
Yes.
What happens is sometimes the best person does not do the best self-tape,
Yeah.
right? And you know, you go into a thing and they say, oh, Val, come on, this one is clearly the best. And I say, no, guys, listen, trust me, let's go and see them. And then when they see the people do it live, they say, oh, right. Because some people, I think, are not good at self-taping. You know, either they're not being fed the lines correctly. Some people are amazing at it, but so I still like to, but it's the casting directors that still whittle it down, you know. I mean, I'm talking about for a film or a TV series. Commercials, heaven knows how they decide that. Any other questions?
Anybody interested in a book on Jack the Ripper, by the way? See me.
Actually, I've got a general question. I worked a lot for the BBC in the 70s and 80s, and I get repeats still. Doctor Who, Ripping Yarns, Rachel Perrin, all of those. Never had any repeats of London's Burning. As far
Really?
as I remember. Have you?
Yes.
Yes, you have.
Okay, look. The contracts changed. And within the contracts changing, certain things happened, okay? Okay, let me give you an example. If you did a series for LWT, okay, and then they sold it to the parent company Granada for UK Gold, you're going to be getting pennies, okay? If you did a series for Yorkshire Television, like an old contract series, like A Touch of Frost. I mean, honestly speaking, I got married and had kids from the repeats of that. It was 80%, right? I have received royalties from London's Burning. But it all depends on what contract you had and what sales we're talking about and what it's shown. Usually they're not much for the satellite, whatever. But if it's shown, I mean, ITV2, ITV3, it's not much. But no, have you received?
I'm sure I have done in the past, and lately nothing. No.
Yeah, no, I've received royalties. I've received repeats. What I would ask you to do, are you still a member of Equity?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're right. Equity collect on our behalf.
Yes, ask them.
As an anonymous sum. Maybe it's all rolled in.
Ah, right.
Now, if you track down in effects,
Yes, it does give you the break.
it gives you the breakdown.
Yeah.
It does give you the breakdown.
Yeah.
But depending on the contract you had, I tell you what the problem is. If your agent is no longer alive,
Yes, I've had that recently.
yeah, I know, that's the problem. Because if your agent is still alive, they get that payment directly. I've seen that with one of my agents that sadly,
It comes through 3 months.
yeah, one of my agents who sadly passed away, the payments go to Equity. And obviously when you get them from the agent, you get the proper breakdown. But yeah, no, there are, I mean, now it would just be a kind of like general thing. But over the years, I didn't get repeats of London. But I think now they do buyouts, don't they? when you do television. Yeah. But what about TV? Do they still do buyouts or do they do repeats?
I think they call it an exploitation fee. Yeah. Well named.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any more questions? Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks in your time on other things.
My name's Chris Saul. I saw the Beatles twice. Sorry, remember. Well, a lot of issues there. That was fantastic. Olin Time and Richard. Amazing. So what am I? I'm talking about London's Burning, and some followers here told me that I was in Series 4 as a chief inspector, promoting someone called Kate, and I think that was Series 8, and then was there not a later series? I played a character called Ian, who was the stepfather of Daniel, who was Jack's son. Jack, played by Clive Wood, I'm still in contact with. I haven't come to one of these, but I think he had a bad accident on the stage 2 years ago. And I think that little play thing ran for 3 or 4 episodes. I'm really, that's sorry, that's quite long. That's Ian and this chief inspector. I remember more about Ian, mainly because the director said to me, I didn't meet the director, I was cast somehow as this part, I can't remember how. And he said to me, Chris, I wouldn't have cast you as Ian. So, and then we had to do the scene. So we got on with it. And it was good. I remember, and I was working with an actor called Sean, and we'd been at the RSC together, the Royal Shakespeare Company, in 1991. Had been doing something called the Thebans by Sophocles, Swan Theatre. So it was nice. It's always nice when you actually work with someone somewhere else. Sort of breaks down the barriers. So she was my wife in this series, and somehow. I think Ian was quite wealthy, and I think he was probably socially one level up from Jack. In reality, of course, that's nonsense. But I know Jack. Clive's fantastic, isn't it? And he did a lot of work at. I also remember him. I was doing Comedy of Errors for the RSC. At round about the same time, and I was released on a Monday from the RSC to go and do the scenes in London's Burning, and I'd always talk with Clive, and he said, "Oh, Chris, I love what you're doing in that, you do a bit of this, what I'm doing, and then you go back doing theatre. I'd love to do that." And I said to him, "Well, why don't you do it?" Anyway, 2 years later, he was there and stayed at the RSC for about 3 years during the 3-year contract time, around about 2010, playing fantastic parts. And he's so good. Anyway, his son, and that was he was called Daniel, wasn't he? He was. No, that's right. Yes, he was Clive's son, of course. He was Clive's son in reality. And I believe he's grown up to be a drummer. I don't know who he drums for. I know nothing more than that. But that would be interesting to find out. I'm a Facebook friend of Clive, so I must tell him about today. How's he getting down, Andrew? It'd be great, wouldn't it? That'd be a big one, yeah. I remember we had a fight. Yeah, I remember there was a birthday scene. I thought it was really well written. Jack had come in, hadn't he, into that, it was Daniel's birthday. What's Daniel, his acting name, the boy's name, or is that his real name? Do you remember that? No. That gentleman, I don't know. Is someone telling me this?
Daniel plays Jack. That's on Steve. I'm Daniel, right? Playing Steve. And his brother is Calvert. He plays Jack.
Right. Okay. I think I understand that, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, it was his birthday. I think it was Daniel's birthday, and Jack bought him this plastic put together thing. I think it was a boat or something. And I come in, and I've got some massive present saying, "Oh, hello, Jack. Happy birthday." And there's a lot of tension between the stepfather and father, as there would be, wouldn't there? Probably many of us know about that. But I thought that was a really well-written scene. And then the tension grew, I remember, and we had a fight. There was an episode in which we had a fight. And what amazes me now, having just come out of a play, you may have known it, A Witness for the Prosecution at County Hall here, playing the judge, the number of experts who came in to teach you not only fight arranging, I mean, that's gone on for years, of course, but also intimacy coaches. So it's another industry. But I remember we did not have a fight arranger for that fight, which I remember was, it was just it was a bit of a wrestle, I think, and I can't remember who won or whether anyone won, or it was just a bit embarrassing and quite rightly so. So I remember that, but I remember the woolly I wore, and that was about. Sorry, that's about it. But I don't know how long I've got up here, but so I think it was Richard who was talking about how you can go up for something and it's a slightly dodgy character, and part of you saying, look, okay, that's not me, but I can play it, it's acting. Everyone will understand that. But the man in the street sometimes wouldn't. And just recently, it was only last year or the year before, Emmerdale Farm were running a very powerful storyline about a father, a daughter, and a granddaughter. I don't know whether you remember it. Does anyone watch Emmerdale?
Oh, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you remember? So,
Oh,
I can't remember the character's name, but actually, he'd had sex with his daughter, and she was 14 or something. She'd given birth to the child, and then he disappears, and he comes back in the family, anyway, it was very complicated, and it was quite clear he was some sort of paedophile, really. And I self-taped for that with my wife, and I thought, this is quite powerful. But what is the effect going to be? Because it ran for a long time, and he was very good. It was Nick Day who got the party there, and I was quite relieved that didn't happen. And I just wonder how Nick sort of got on there. I think he went on a long theatre tour, if I remember, probably hiding away. Sorry, I was just linking to what you were talking about, Roger. You don't know my brother, by the way. He was a guide, he was an actor, and then he became a bunch of guys. It's called Raymond Sawyer.
No,
it's a few years ago. I'll talk to you.
He's also a trader.
Yeah. Is it Martin?
God's waiting.
Right, okay. So I don't know whether Denville Hall is a retirement home for, I'm not quite sure whether it's well-established actors, whether there's a sort of a, you know, if you're a jobbing actor, you can't go there. Although I tell a lie, because I do know someone who was quite young and booked his place into Denville Hall years ago. So perhaps you've just got to be able to afford it. But it's in North London, and for instance, I've only been there once to visit an old actor, friend of mine called Clifford Rose, who did a lot. He oh my God, what was that thing? Secret. He played a serious Nazi. Secret
Army.
Secret Army. So he was the main guy in the Secret Army, and they repeated it recently. Anyway, he went to Denville Hall. He came from Stratford, and we used to have coffee, and I went to see him. And just to give you some idea of this Denville Hall, that's why I'm talking about Denville Hall. But and so I went and visited him, and next door to him was a guy called Sebastian Braitz, who I'd worked with the Oxford Playhouse in 1969, my first ever job. And then next to him was Marianne Faithfull. And that was a bit of an eye opener there. And of course, she left us last year, I think. So anyway, I'm actually going to do Exit Pursued by a Bard on the 1st of July, actually. But going back, so, and I think Hetty was talking about developing a one-woman show after having an amazing career and exciting times both on screen, on stage, and off screen. People like to know that, and it keeps you exercised, keeps you vocally nimble. It's a bit of a job, but you can be committed to it, and a lot of actors do it. It's possibly easy to get together and easy to perform, but the marketing aspect of it is a nightmare. So it's very difficult to do all that stuff. You need someone to promote that. Do you want me to say it all about my glittering career?
So,
There we are.
has anyone got any questions?
For Chris? No. There we are. Okay, thank you. Anyway,
Thank you very much.
thanks.
If you can tell us your name and who you played and your time on London's Burning, please.
Yeah, so it's Paddy Natlin, and I played the wonderful Donna in London's Burning, and I shall keep my chat to you about London's Burning. So it was, as an actor, it was the part I was waiting for. She was the person, if you guys remember, everyone loved to hate. She was a con artist, she ripped off the fireman. And my first episode was called Martini Girl, which was anytime, any place, anywhere. And I had people in my street that were standing outside my flat singing it, you know, because it was we all have a character. Joe Public loved to have a character, but they love, but they hate as well. And that's what Donna was. And I don't know about anyone else, but it was the wonderful Corinne Rodriguez, who was a casting director at the time. And Corinne would never, ever have more than one actor to meet the directors and the producers, because she knew her industry and she knew her people. And she said, I know exactly who's right to play this part, and that was it. I didn't even really audition. I just met someone and got it straight away. Didn't read or anything. And Donna was amazing. I was working with the wonderful Gerard Horan, who you will remember as Charisma, brilliant actor, because, and it was so brilliantly written, because he was, they call him charisma, and he was the most uncharismatic character. I mean, it was such a wimp. I don't know if you guys remember, but he had that cupboard in our first episode, because as a con artist, I could smell him a mile away in the pub when I met him in that episode. And he took me back to his flat, and he had all those trophies. Like, he went, oh yeah, I won this for, billiards, and I won this for golf, and I won this for cricket. And of course, he'd won nothing. He just had trophies in his in this cupboard. And working with, I mean, I didn't get to meet a lot of the other people. I only saw them in the trailer while I was waiting to go on, and of course they were lovely. I knew Mark Arden personally because one of my best friends was his best friend. So I didn't get to meet a lot of the other Catherine, the wonderful Catherine I got to know well, the lady, the firewoman. And it was just, I mean, there are just too many memories for me. It was so wonderful and brilliant working with Gerard Horan. It was the TV series of the time. It was absolutely, you said you were in London's Burning. It was like, wow. It was the #1 series. Brilliant actors, brilliant scripts, brilliant directors. It was just, and of its time, and those incredible fires that they created. And what we heard afterwards, that Donna and Gerard, Donna and Charisma, they didn't want us to become a bit like the Den and Angie of EastEnders. So I was in 5 episodes. And then if you remember, I was beaten up by his mum. She came over from Australia because I was so awful that it's one of my favourite things, when he'd been burnt and he was lying in bed, in a hospital bed, burnt. I remember they filmed it, and I was walking down the corridor, and before you saw me, all you could hear was my high heels clip-clopping down the corridor and my earrings flying backwards and forwards. And there was Charisma in bed, burnt from the fire. And he got heed of what I was like. And I was kind of leaning over the bed and going, "Are you all right, Leslie? Are you okay? All right?" Because I didn't even want to go and see him. And he just turned around and he looked at me and he just went, "Anytime, any place, anywhere." And they just shut the episode down. And then when he got out of hospital, I turned his house into a hairdressing salon and was refusing to leave. I kept saying things like, you'll probably remember, "Well, I think that as you invited me into your bed, you'll find that I own half the house." So that's why he phoned his mum up and got her from Australia to beat me up and throw me out of the house with all my bags and everything, which was the last episode. And another thing I'll remember that I loved so much was when he said, "You can come and live here." And I don't know if you guys remember, she turned up in the cab and it was full of leopard skin and teddy bears and those awful lamps like from the 60s, like and lava lamps. And the end and the end of that scene was just Charisma, just in shock. "I ain't got no money. Got any money for the cab?" And that was it. You just knew that she was just going to completely and utterly rip him off. And he was just such a wimp that he couldn't do anything about it. And it was magic. I was devastated. I had people stop me in the street for 5 years afterwards saying, "Will Donna ever come back?" Because it was the character that you love to hate. And the whole thing was, it was classy. It was so classy. Everything about it was, you were treated so well. It was magic. I'll really, really, really never forget it. I've done loads of things after that, loads of telly, and I went straight into theatre because I wanted to do theatre, and I'll really, really, really never forget it. I've done loads of things after that, loads of telly, and I went straight into theatre because I wanted to do theatre, and I played 2 brilliant roles in Taste of Honey, Shirley Valentine. But London's Burning has never left me for the whole experience of it. And I've never quite got over Donna. And that's my experience of London's Burning. It was magical. Really, really magical. And I think it's so lovely that you guys are here. You know, and remembering, there are people that come up to me and tell me my lines, and I go, oh wow, can't believe it. And you know things that you remember, things that we don't even remember. So it's a privilege to be here and chat to you about what was an incredibly magical time in my life. So thank you, all of you, for coming.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Right, I know most people know you anyway, but if you can tell me who you are, what character that you played, and your time on Agnes Burning.
You think you'd know by now. Anyway, you know me. It's Amanda Dickinson, and I played poor old Jean, Sick Note's wife. Don't know what to say to you, really. I've met all of you so many times, and like Paddy said, thank you so much for coming, because some of you have come a very long way, I know. We've got a really nice lady here called Tash, whose father was an actual fireman at Dockhead and actually appeared in some of the programmes. So it's lovely that she's come, sort of pay homage to her dad. I got into it really probably by accident. I started off my career as a dancer for Dougie Squires, second generation, if anyone old enough to remember that. But I went to a stage school, and my best mate at stage school was a girl called Tracy Ullman. And we used to muck around and do accents and make little characters, and I guess it's fair to say she was probably better at it than I was. And after I'd done my dancing, I thought I would give it up. And then she phoned me up and said, oh, guess what? I'm going to make a record. But I don't really want to do it on my own. To you and Alison, who is another girl we're at school with, do you want to do it with me? So we did, and we actually ended up having about 5 or 6 hit records, and we went all over the world, and we did things like the Johnny Carson show, and it was all terribly exciting. Then I came back and thought, do you know what? I think I'd like to be a theatrical agent. I think that would be good fun. So I got a job with a very, very good theatrical agent called Lou Coulson. And I worked for this lady, Lou Coulson, and I used to muck around in the office and, you know, carry on doing my accents and everything. And then one day she said to me, I've just had this job come in. I think you'd be really good. Do you want to go up for a job? And I went, oh, all right then. And it was London's Burning. So I went and I auditioned for Corinne Rodriguez and got the job, which was originally like 2 scenes in 1 episode, which then kind of stretched to 12 years. And in all that time, I carried on working for Lou Coulson, and I used to take days off to do London's Burning. And I did a few other jobs as well. But I always felt slightly like the fraud in the pack, because everyone else had these great careers, and I was like, really like that. But you know what? It was the most fantastic job. The people were great. The crew was great. You used to turn up in the morning and there'd be this lovely girl called Zoe who'd be standing there with a cup of tea for you. And whatever you asked this girl Zoe to do, she would do it. She was fantastic. She was the runner. And I always remember her mantra was when you used to say, can you do that for me, Zoe? She'd go, always pleasure, never a chore. And I've always remembered that. And I always say that. And I used to say that to my little boy when he was growing up. And I think that sort of positivity and camaraderie encapsulates what that series was, because there were no big egos really on that series. Everybody got on. I think everybody realised that they'd been given a really good winning hand with that programme. And I think we all cherished it. And I have lovely memories. And I never fell out with anyone. I never had an argument with anyone. I made some nice friends, some good memories. And one thing I will tell you before I see if you want to ask me anything was Paul Knight, who was our producer, came into the trailer one day when there, and I think there was Richard, me, Glenn Murphy, Andrew Casimir, and a couple of other people, and he said, "I've just had a phone call." And we said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I've had a phone call from somebody's private secretary who wanted to let you all know that his boss, who is an elderly lady who lives in a big house at the end of the mall, would like you to know that she keeps an hour aside on Sunday evenings because she loves your programme." Can you guess who that was?
Queen.
The Queen. So it doesn't get much better than that. So what a legacy. That's it, Andrew.
Where did you train?
Italian Conti.
Italian Conte. Yeah.
I'm done, Andrew. Does anyone want to ask any questions? Or are you all just...
Anybody else got any questions? No?
No?
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
guys.
And I played Nancy Ray. Now, I will address the elephant in the room. Of course, I played Billy Ray's mum, and we all know. I just want to let you know that I trained at the Anna Scher Theatre, Children's Theatre. I was 14 years of age when I got my first job, and I remember when John Alford was at drama school with me. There was all of us there. There was Gary and Martin Kemp, Linda Robson, Pauline Quirk. We all trained at my sister Gillian. We all trained at the same theatre. And Johnny Alford was there as a cheeky 12-year-old. I know what he's been accused of. And I know the shame that he felt that made him take his own life. And to me, that is devastating. I knew him as a young boy. I actually don't believe what he was accused of. Yeah. I know him well enough to know that he was completely set up. And the shame of it made him take his own life. And that will stick with me for the rest of my life because I've known him a long, long time. So that's the elephant in the room. And I went into London's Burning because I knew Jack Rosenthal very well. I was in a film of his called The Knowledge. And he then said, I then became his babysitter for a little while with him and Maureen, and I looked after their children when they were small. And he said to me, I'm writing a puppy, I was one of the lucky ones. I don't know, but I never, ever, when I was there during Life on Mars. So that's that. But anyway, when I left the police force, Corinne Rodriguez called me in and Paul Knight called me in for an audition to play Nancy Ray, and I got the part. And I had a wonderful time in London's Burning. And really enjoyed it. I then, after I left London's Burning, went into lots of different things, as you know. But David here, we toured together, and it brings us back to you again, Richard. I played, we toured in Sherlock Holmes and the Ripper Murders. And no, we didn't. What did we tour in?
It was Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, Jekyll and Hyde. But Jekyll and Hyde. And I played. Where did I play Mary Kelly then? Mary Kelly, one of the. I played Mary Kelly. I think people that killed. It was Sherlock Holmes and the Ripper Murders. Sorry, it wasn't. But sorry, I'm getting the two mixed up. And so I was murdered as Mary Kelly. So I know one of the misogynistic murders that you're talking about. But anyway, back to London's Burning. I can only reiterate everything that you've said about the camaraderie that was there. I enjoyed my whole time filming there with the people. They were lovely. I mean, you know, I don't want to sound sycophantic or blowing smoke up people's bottoms, as they say nowadays, but it was a lovely time and a part that I'm very proud of. I have to be careful now because people go, oh, you played the boy's name and he did this. And I'm thinking, shut your mouth, you know. None of this happened. It just wasn't true. But I am very pleased to say that I'm now with a new man in my life that I met 7 months ago. And he is a retired fireman. So there he is. John, and I'm also here with my really good friend Perry Gascoigne. There he is, who is a big London's Burning fan, and we met quite by chance and became good friends, and that's who I'm here with today. So once again, thank you everyone that's here. It was lovely to see Hetty get up. Again, I followed your career and watched you in everything and thought, oh my goodness, she's in everything, that woman. And it's lovely to see you here today. So thank you all for coming and listening to me once again. And I wish you all the best. Any questions? I think I covered everything, didn't I? So no questions? No, goodbye. Oh, just to let you know, I no longer act because 7 years ago I became paralysed from the waist down by a virus. So I wanted to carry on, but it was a bit difficult, so I can't do it anymore.
Glad to see you're better.
Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon, that's been fascinating listening to everyone. And my name's Gary Roost, and I played Young Workman in episode 4. In those days, I did quite a lot of TV work, a bit of theatre, and I first worked for London Weekend Television through Tony Arnell, who was an amazingly generous, kind man, lovely man. He'd see me in a show at Theatre Hall Stratford East. He saw quite a few people, called 1 or 2 of us in, called me in. I turned up, my American Air jacket, stubble, very young, but seriously professional. And he set me up with my agent, Bill Ford, and we talked about a lot of things. And he rang me up. He said, "Oh, I got you a job in Bottle Boys." So that's my first job on Bottle TV. I did another job for him on the Dempsey and Mate piece. So then I was called up for London's Burning. I knew it was a new project and TV series, and of course you might be thinking, you don't know, it might be something more in it. And the great Jerry Mills directed it, and I was a bit of a fan of TV history, you know, directors that have done things like The Avengers and Z-Cars and things like that. So I grew up, I loved The Avengers. And I went with Tony Warmby, who was did some of that. So when I met Jerry, I thought, this is TV history. This guy's, you know, he was very, I'd say, very intellectual thinker. And he said, look, and Corinne Rodriguez was the casting director. And he said, look, this is 3 characters rolled into 1 or 4. And he said, what do you think? I went, okay, that's fine. Because I was thinking, that's 3 characters, 3 mindsets, you know. And it was just a 2-day shoot, I think, somewhere, maybe London Bridge, some demolition area, because it's a gas explosion. And I was playing this character that, you know, got some materials he's like trying to sell off before, you know, anyone else took it. And there was a group of people that were like alcoholics or homeless or whatever, and they were worried that some of they died in the explosion, and because these characters being put together, it was a decent character, it's a good little role, but I was kind of under-energized for the bit where Sean Blow was in front. Where are they? Where are they? But I had no lines for that part. There was another question. There was no line, and you think all I could do was like shrug my shoulders. And the other day I thought, well, maybe I should have done something like the Marx Brothers, you know, do some of that acting. And Jerry came up to me and said, "You look very underwhelmed. This person might have died." And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll give it my best shot. I just came up with a shrug, really.
But everything else was fine because there were lines to, you know, generate your energy and things like that. But it was a very friendly set, and all the best people were drawn into it, the directors and writers and the costume people. You knew that there was a lot of experience as it's still a pioneering TV show, and it was in the first series. You didn't know it was going to become such a big thing, but it was pretty obvious it was a, you know, a top show, and that, you know, only good things could come from it. And so for me, I learned a lot on that job. I always reflect on it because I do a bit of writing now. I do my own shows, and so I chase every word down. I play all the characters. I do one own show and play all the characters, and I make sure that even if that character's got one line, it adds to the energy of the thing. You know, it's not a criticism, but that's what I learned as a writer. You know, chase down every word, make it sound great, and give it, you know, so it adds to the. So I never try not to miss a nuance, you know, as a writer. And I carried on with my career after that, still doing TV shows. But I knew Glenn from Theatre Royal, socialising, Glenn Murphy, and I knew Sean Blowers from a job I did, or we did some readings or something. And so I always watched it because I liked, you know, the idea of these guys, you know, were doing it and having a great career. And I just dropped in from time to time just to see how that series progressed. And a lot of my friends ended up doing it, like David and other people. And it's just a great, you know, a great vehicle for talent, I think. And that's what I remember from it. I did the bill. The bill had the same kind of thing, really. It was a great factory for work on people's lives. And yeah, I mean, I do reflect on being part of television history, even though it's just a small part. And then I did other things. I led up to different work. I think it's just really important to be able to reflect on these things. And thanks for Andrew and people like myself doing these things, because we're all part of TV history. And, I'm lucky enough to work with some of the great directors and producers who came through the 60s. You know. Oh yeah, Tony Arnell, he was one of the first spotlight guys, which a lot of people might forget. But he was one of the big guys in. He was really keen on developing talent, and so he became the head of casting. And Jane Arnell, I used to do a little bit for her, and I feel very fortunate that I had that connection. It was really started my career off. And although I wouldn't say I had a golden career, I made my mark and I had an opportunity. And that's what any young actor would love to have. And these days with subtapes and things like that, fine, you have to do it. But there's nothing like being face to face, meeting people.
Chiaya, no, I know Miss Vernon, please. Thank you. You put me on last time. A couple of Guinnesses in, it's not always easy. Oh my goodness. I just point out, Gary's a really old mate of mine. If you get a chance, I think it's online, see his Andy Warhol one-man show. It's brilliant. As was his show of Francis Bacon. One of the most versatile, incredible actors I've ever met or known. Fortunately for about 40 years, because we used to always meet at auditions. Like actors do, and you sit there going, it's your turn this time. You know, going back, we don't realise how lucky we were, because you can literally get a telly job, and then you get another one, and another one, and another one. So obviously as you get older and times change, shows like London's Burning, like The Bill, they offered such great opportunities to young
up and coming actors really, and it's good to do. I can't remember London's Burning, can you? But it was a long time ago, 40 years. But I played Rick, who was a tow rag, he really was, and he was going out with this girl. He'd come out of prison, and he knocked her about a bit, which is not very nice. And I remember turning it down because I said I don't want to. It doesn't decry lovely programs like London's Burning, because I did really enjoy it, even though it was very cold, and I got hurt quite a lot. Will that do? Can I have my Guinness now? Thanks, Carl. Like actors do, and you sit there and go, it's your turn this time. You know, going back, we don't realise how lucky we were, because you could literally get a telly job, and then get another one, and another one, and another one. So obviously as you get older and times change, shows like London's Burning, like The Bill, they offered such great opportunities to young up-and-coming actors really, and it's good to do. I can't remember London's Burning, can you? It was a long time ago, 40 years. But I played Rick, who was a tow rag, he really was. And he was going out with this girl. He'd come out of prison, and he knocked her about a bit, which is not very nice. And I remember turning it down because I said, I don't want to punch a woman on telly. You know, there's only certain things you're prepared to do. So they cut that scene and just gave her a bruise. But unfortunately, she was the sister, possibly one of the most popular characters on television at the time. It was Ross Burton. I don't know this character, you will. And so the second episode, I beat him up, which was quite a stunning fight scene. I used it on my show for years. I look too old now to use it, but yeah, it was really, because I can't fight my way out of a paper crisp bag, to be honest with you. But, you know, at drama school, you're taught to do this stuff. And it looked wicked. And unfortunately, one of the, what do we say, supporting artists at the time, he was joining in. He was one of my mates in the thing. And he went a bit too far and he gave Ross an uppercut. And Ross's tooth actually went through his lip. It was horrible. And such a method actor, I didn't care at the time. But I was really worried about him afterwards. And yeah, he was bleeding and everything. But yeah, he was a brave actor. And then in the next episode, I get beaten up by his mates, who were just two really burly stuntmen, who basically threw cement in my eyes and then just beat the hell out of me. And anybody who's worked with stuntmen will know they always go, oh, don't worry, love, I won't hurt you, I'll pull my punch. And Jesus, it hurt. You know, because I couldn't see and they were hitting me and it was really horrible. But it was a great time. A lovely production, really helpful and friendly people, as everybody's mentioned already. And I didn't go out for a couple of weeks because, you know, in those days, telly, everybody watched it, millions. And I didn't want to go out because people get a bit leery, don't they, if you're in a pub and you look like you can, like boxers get it all the time. And so I just had to stay in my own little East End pub because they all knew I was an actor, and so I was safe there. But it was quite a weird time. And the only other things I really remember is, one, it was freezing cold, it was snowing, they had to sweep the snow away because of the continuity. And I was only wearing a little shirt and a Levi jacket, and I was absolutely freezing. And when you get that cold, that's the only time I think I forgot my lines in filming ever. And it was so
Do you
terrible.
remember our lovely wardrobe lady who used to have the tumble dryer on in the wardrobe trailer, so that when you finish the cold scene, you could wrap yourself in a warm towel?
Yeah, you get
You don't
blankets,
get
or you
service
get
like that anymore.
hot water bottles. I mean, I've done some big movies where I've never been so cold in my life, and I thought I was going to die. But they're American ones, and they don't look after you like that. I've always felt safe. I've stopped doing those little cameos in the big Hollywood movies because they kill it. You know, it's so dangerous. Whereas whenever I've done anything in the UK, I felt completely safe, looked after, warm, hot cups of cocoa, all that sort of stuff, lots of cuddles and massages and, are you alright, love? Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, so it was a lovely job, but I wasn't in it that long, I don't think, but I think they got me down as doing loads of episodes, but I believe it was 3. It was like beginning, middle and end. Bad guy beats up girl, beats up her brother, gets beaten up, in and out. But it was very new at the time, you know, it's like The Bill. You know, I think, one of the first ever episodes of that, and was really exciting because nobody quite knew. There's a lot of handheld on the bill. I don't know if I can't remember what line was burning, but you know, and it was sort of taken from one of those big New York, what was that police thing with Daniel Travanti? I can't remember what it's called now, but you know, it's based on that kind of thing. Very
Street Blues.
That's it, yeah. So everyone's starting to use those sort of styles in filming, weren't they? And sort of guys were running around with cameras and knocking you over when you were supposed to be in the scene as well. But no, it's a lovely job, and like Gary said, thank you, Andrew, because you're kind of, this is like a museum of classic television. You know, most of us who started in the 80s, well, I started in the 80s, you know, you've been in them all. You've done your One Foot in the Grave, your Birds of a Feather, all those things. But in those days, the business would hold on to you. They'd nurture you. You know, if you did a sitcom like One Foot in the Grave, they'd let it go 2 or 3 series before it really hit. You know, nowadays they'll probably give you one. Same with bands, you know, you used to get a record deal for 6 albums. Now it's like if your first album don't sell, you're out. You know, and I just don't see that anymore. I mean, I don't go up for television shows. I've done a few in recent years, but there's also a class system. You know, a lot of my mates who went into theatre, it took forever to get on television. And I went into doing movies, and I couldn't get back on television. It's really weird, but my favourite thing is actually, rather than going away halfway across the world doing 2 lines in a big Hollywood movie, I'd rather do 3 days on the television in London. So I love sitting on those double-decker buses and having your lunch and getting told off because they go, you're supposed to be in this bus, and I'm eating with some of the extras or the special supporting artists because you know them from before and they're nice people and you just like dinner with them, you know. But I love all that scene of just being in a British television series, you know, even if I'd traditionally gone in and done 1 episode or 2 episodes or 3, but you know, I don't think I want to be stuck in the long one, to be honest with you. Although I do it now because I need a pension, and you know, I've turned down EastEnders I think about 3 times. I had to do it once because I was so skinned, but I always said I'd do it in my 70s or 80s because that's my care home. They will drive me to work. They'll have a nurse. They'll have a doctor, and they'll look after me. So who knows, that might come. But there doesn't seem to be much telly like that anymore. It's all being weighted towards your Netflixes, and the money's much less on the Netflix ones than the odd telly job. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, it was a lovely job on the spoon. I'm not talking too much about it. 1, because I don't remember, and 2, I don't want to repeat myself from last time I came. But yeah, some great people. It's lovely to see all these faces. Some I haven't seen before, but certainly some I recognise. So thanks for coming. Do you have any questions? No?
What was the most significant TV job that you felt really structured your career?
Wow. Well, that's a good question. TV jobs that structured my career. One that nearly did. I did I think it's a 6 or 3-part series in the late 80s. Called How to Be Cool. And that was written by Philip Pullman, who was a bit of an unknown writer then. He's massive now, I believe. I don't read those books. But it was really innovative. I mean, the Sun and the Daily Star tried to get it taken off the television because it was all about acid house and young people in smiley badges. And I had one of the lead roles in it. And so maybe I'd go called Ian Eames, who was a genius. He was an animator. Worked a lot with Pink Floyd, and he gave me complete free rein. You know, we rewrote Philip Pullman's script. He wasn't very happy about it, but so I had my own catchphrase, my own theme tune, all this stuff. So that really was looking like it was pushing me forward. And I had like spiky hair up to here. I was wearing like Beatles suits and wrinkle pickers. And they were talking about at the time about bringing back Doctor Who. I think it was around the time Doctor Who went. And all the producers going, David, you're Doctor Who. And I was like, oh, please. And years later, I saw Matt Smith, and there he was in the same bow tie, the same shoes, the same spike here. But he didn't go much further, unfortunately, because there was a lovely bloke at the time. Nobody had any idea, but his name was Gary Glitter. So we never got any repeats or any royalties because it was only got shown once. And I suppose the other one was Inspector Morse. Just for the class of it, you know, I was in the next to last one. And it was all Victorian. It was like Morse was solving the murder from his hospital bed. So it was all flashbacks. It's like a very, very posh version of Crime Watch. And that was just a joy. I mean, that sort of, I wrote off that for years, to be honest with you, just because of the name of the series. But that was a wonderful thing to do. Mostly, I think, to be honest, the millions of telly bits we do, the movies we do, the real life-changing things you do are in the theatre, I believe. You know, just to touch an audience that's actually there. You know, it's a bit like being, it sounds arsey, but it's a bit like being a healer. You know, if you make an old lady cry in the third row, you realise you're performing catharsis on people. You're actually making a change. And I did a play for Joint Stock many years ago, and it was about homelessness. And I believe it eventually helped to change government law on homelessness. So, you know, things like that, you realise, wow, I didn't realise, but this is why I'm here. I always wanted to do community theatre. I got taken in by Rose Bruford when I was at school. And I couldn't go because I couldn't get a grant. So I ended up going to Guildhall, a bit posher. But, you know, community theatre was always my idea of working with people and changing the world and stuff. And this guy took my place in the end because they held it over for a year, but I got into Guildhall, so I decided to go there. I can't remember his name, Gary Altman, I think his name was, but he hadn't done much since, do you know what I mean? He's all right, but, you know. But yeah.
Well, it becomes very clinical, unless you fancy your co-actor like crazy. But with me and Charisma, it was just amazing. I think a lot of actors say this, movie stars, whatever, it's so clinical. And you don't know how many takes you've got to do of it. And so I think it's very easy to separate it, unless you do have an attraction to an actor. There was a theatre job I did where myself and the actor were very, very attracted to each other, and then huge snogging sessions, and we did end up having a huge affair. But that was just I don't know what anyone else, if they've had those kind of scenes where they've been in bed with their fellow actors and things like that. But as I say, it's just, I've had a couple of tellies where I've had to do that because I kind of tended to play the bad girl. It's, yeah, don't even think about it. It's just another scene. I don't know whether you ladies have got a different experience or any of the guys here, but that's
with
how I feel.
Richard, I just used to go on every scene. You should just be reading OK magazine. And that's what they let me do.
Right, you know, so yeah, so that's, and then you're right though, it does, especially with Hollywood people, you know, very often you find they'll leave their husbands or wives because you get so close, don't you? You've got to be so kind of intimate, and as I said, if there is an attraction, I think it can be difficult, and marriages and things break up, and then maybe their relationship breaks up. But I think generally you'll find with most actors it's just too clinical. You just get on and do it, and you've usually got a bit of underwear on as well. You know what I mean?
Thank God for that.
Certainly did. Thank God for that. Certainly did in London's Burning. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Can I just flip that round then? If you so I used to go to see a musical that was in London, Battle of Hell, and two of the main characters were married in real life, and they played the married couple on stage.
Yeah.
How does that work? That if you're experiences of people that are married, and how do you? This is a home part of that because you've got to go and be professional in the film or music on the stage, but you might have had a Barney the night before I not had the dishwasher. So does that happen often? How does someone professionally put a game face on? It's a bit like, I'm a football referee, so we say once we step over that white line and you've got a game face on, you're in match mode. Does that happen often where there's people that are married or in relationships in real life are then working together in TV, film, musicals? And how hard is that to leave your home problem at home and then switch on to your job sort of thing?
Well, I think I could only say again, as actors, we know, you know, we're doing a part. I mean, I think the famous couple was Judi Dench and Michael Williams, wasn't it? They did that TV series for ages and ages and ages.
Yeah.
But as an actor, you know, I remember when I was in Godspell, I absolutely loathed Jesus. And I had to sing Day by Day to him with this so much love in my eyes and hatred in my heart. But you're an actor, you just go on and you play your role.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people who were married or in a relationship who were playing opposite each other. But I know that Judi Dench talked a lot about how fab it was when her and Michael Williams did it. So I think you become an actor, you know, you put whatever you feel about someone you're working with, you step into another world. you're another person. You know, you're that character. So I'm sure that if I had to work with a boyfriend or a husband or anything like that, you just automatically switch off because you're not. You know, I'm not Paddy when I go on stage. I'm whoever I'm playing.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that that's what people do. I'm sure that for some people, I know there's an actress, Erin Geraghty. She does a lot, doesn't she, with Paul Lathers? And they love working together. They adore it. So, you know, I'm sure it works very well.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One.